Isn't it time for us to wake up to the inequalities and suffering all around us? For example, significant disparities exist in access to housing, both here in my little town of Eugene, Oregon, and around the world. At the same time, there are so many of us who long to make a difference and to contribute to those in need. My guest today is CEO of an organization that brings together these groups in a way that leads to a win-win for everybody. Hi, this is Marlena Fiol from Becoming Who We Truly Are. It's a YouTube channel that deepens our understanding of who we are and what's possible for us. If you find value in this video, please do give it a thumbs up. It really makes a difference. Today, I feel privileged and honored to introduce our guest, who's a leader in the service arena, Jonathan Reckford. He's the CEO of Habitat for Humanity International. He's also the author of Our Better Angels, 7 Simple Virtues That Will Change Your Life. Habitat for Humanity began back in the 1970s as a grassroots organization in southern Georgia. The housing organization has since grown to become a leading global nonprofit. It works in local communities. It works across all 50 United States and also in more than 70 countries around the world. Habitat has helped more than 29 million people gain access to new or improved housing. Jonathan has served as CEO of Habitat since 2005. Under his leadership, the organization has grown from serving, get this, 125 individuals per year to more than 8.7 million people in 2018 alone. That's remarkable. Do you ever think about making that kind of difference in the world? If you'd like to listen to my hour-long interview with Jonathan Reckford, I've posted the link to the web address below. And at the end of this episode, we'll provide recommendations for additional resources on finding your calling and making a difference. Welcome, Jonathan. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you, Marlena. It's great to be with you.
Jonathan, I'm sure all of our listeners know about Habitat for Humanity, but still, I think there might be some misconceptions out there, like President Jimmy Carter was not the founder. So I'd like to begin by asking you to briefly describe Habitat and the vision and mission of the organization.
Thank you. It is funny that often we are best known for 2 things that turn out not to be true. One, that President and Mrs. Carter did not actually start Habitat, though there's no question they put it on the map and are our most famous volunteers and have been quite a great inspiration to me and so many others. The second biggest misconception is that Habitat gives away houses. And I think the deep heart of the Habitat model is the idea of partnership. And from the very beginning, it came with this idea that it would bring people together across all kinds of barriers to build decent housing. And in that idea of partnership, there are 3 requirements for a family in our traditional model. First, they have to be in need. So we serve families that the market wouldn't traditionally lend to from an income perspective. Second, they have to partner, and that means putting in what we call sweat equity. So literally helping build their homes and their neighbors' homes and putting in hundreds of hours of participating in the process, along with taking classes in financial management and home maintenance. So they're really well prepared. And then third is the ability to have clean credit and pay back an affordable mortgage. And we recycle those payments in the community, helping the next family have their opportunity for safe, decent housing.
Yeah. So President and Mrs. Carter, as you said, have been deeply involved with Habitat for over 35 years. Would you share with our listeners a bit about the Carter's role in the organization and particularly about the Carter Work Project?
There was a fateful event where they had done a little bit of volunteering locally in Georgia, but President Carter was in New York for a UN meeting and was jogging, and he jogged by a Habitat build site in the Lower East Side of Manhattan and made a comment, and reporters were, of course, following him along, and he said, "We need to come and do something about this." that led to what turned into the first annual Jimmy Carter Work Project, which later became the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter Work Project. And a busload of volunteers with the Carters came up from Plains, Georgia to New York City, slept in a church basement, and worked on rehabbing this 5-story tenement building, and then came back the next year and did it again. And that became an annual tradition. And Habitat was a tiny organization. This was 1984. But the image of a former president of the United States sleeping in a church basement and literally doing the construction work just captured the media, and that really put Habitat on the map. And so I've had the privilege now of being part of 14 of those Carter builds, and there's some of my absolute personal highlights. But there is an incredible energy to every Habitat build. But when you then bring thousands of people together all at once to build a whole community or a whole neighborhood at once, it is an extraordinary thing. And the Carters also have certainly been role models, spokespeople, and just, I think, exemplified. And so I think so many people, when they hear Habitat, they think of President Carter, and that's been a good thing for us.
I recently wrote a blog about finding our calling, and the results of a Gallup poll that over 80% of college-educated Americans aspire to have meaningful work, but less than 50% actually attain it. So I'm wondering, based on your experience, why are so many people desiring but not finding a meaningful calling?
You know, it's so complex. I think there are, life circumstances. So sometimes we just have to do things to care for our families, to put food on the table. So I think for some people, their calling can be through their volunteer or other work, and they're not able to do that through their primary job or occupation. I think sometimes it's lack of self-awareness. I know I have some friends for whom it became the golden handcuffs. They got trapped into a lifestyle that made it hard to switch. But they're not doing work they truly loved or that really draws them. And so I think it's a different set of answers. And I think, to me, you can find it in different ways. But I think we're all called to, look. I often encourage young people to look for the problem that really tugs on their heart. And my favorite definition of calling comes from theologian Frederick Buechner, who said, your purpose or your calling is that place where the deep gladness of your heart meets the world's great need. And I think that's a nice image, because it's that intersection often that really turns into purpose and calling.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jonathan, you spoke earlier about the model of partnerships, particularly you talked about the sweat equity approach. But recently you've also increased the scope of your corporate partnerships. Would you describe some of these partnerships and what their evolving role is in Habitat's mission?
Corporations have been a really critical part of expanding our work. And to me, like all good partnerships, everyone should both give and gain in a good partnership. Where we shine historically has been in two areas. One, the sort of goodwill that is associated with Habitat's brand. So our studies have shown that when companies partner with Habitat, that makes consumers like their company better. So we revalued our brand a year and a half ago, and we're struck that Habitat's brand, if we were a private company, would be valued at $15.6 billion. So there's this aura, halo of goodwill that comes with Habitat. Second piece, because of the volunteer aspect of Habitat, has been employee engagement. And so many of our partners have had thousands and thousands of their employees come out and build. And that turns out to be an incredibly strong way to inculcate those employees into the values of the company and give them a team building experience.
Jonathan, the roots of Habitat are Christian, but you're very clear that the organization has always been radically inclusive, that you welcome volunteers, supporters, families, people from all backgrounds and all faiths. Given the Christian roots of the organization, was there ever pushback about this broad level of inclusiveness?
So when I first joined Habitat, there were a group of people who were parsing my speeches to see if I said Jesus enough, and there was another group who were saying, "We love Habitat, just don't ever talk about God." And what we have tried to say, and we have a phrase that was not original to me, but I've adopted and love, is that God is our center, but not our border. Everyone is welcome, and we genuinely and joyfully welcome everyone to be a part of Habitat. And Clarence Stern had a quote that I just love in the formative letter that was the founding of Habitat. And he said, what the poor need is not charity, but capital, not caseworkers, but co-workers. And what the rich need is a wise, honorable, and just way of divesting themselves of their overabundance. And he had a view that everyone had something to give and everyone had something to gain when they worked together. And I think that spirit is what has driven that sense of inclusiveness from the very beginning, and something we hold dearly to.
You describe service as the place where the other virtues come to life. I grew up with a living model of this in my book, Nothing Bad Between Us. I describe my parents' deep devotion to service. They were Mennonite medical missionaries in Paraguay. And among other things, they changed how leprosy is treated on the planet today. Their service came to define who they were. And in fact, this podcast season explores service as a path to helping us become our truest selves. And exactly in line with our theme, Jonathan, you've written, and I quote, "By serving others, we become our best selves." My question to you is this. Based on your experience, what is it about service that makes it the wellspring of the other 6 virtues?
You know, to me, service is so fundamental because it takes us out of ourselves. It's easy to become selfish. It's easy to become inward looking. And to me, one of the most healing things someone can do if they're struggling is go help someone else. And so that genuine sense to serve allows us to tap into, I think, a core human need to be useful to others, to be helpful to others, and it's a way to activate it.
Jonathan, if there were one last thing you'd like our listeners to hear, what would that be?
My hope is that this will encourage you to go out, look for something in your community that needs to get better, and make a small commitment and take a positive step and go do something about it. And that will hopefully be the beginning of a path to great joy.
This has been such a meaningful conversation.
It's a great pleasure, Marlena. Thanks so much for having me on.
If you found value in this episode, please do give it a thumbs up. Also, please post any questions or comments you might have. I'm interested and I will respond each day. For example, what do you think about the kind of work Habitat is doing? And just so you know, I'll be posting a new episode of this YouTube channel each Tuesday morning at 6 Eastern Time. For further information on finding your calling and making a difference, we recommend the following resources. First, a YouTube presentation on compassion and kinship by Father Gregory Boyle. Also, check out this TEDx presentation by Adam Leipzig on how to know your life purpose in 5 minutes. And for a look at my personal path to finding my calling, we recommend my memoir recently released by Mango Publishing, Nothing Bad Between Us. The web addresses for each of these resources are in the show notes. And remember, we are together on this journey.